My dead daughter spoke to me the moment I tried to kill her murderer. I didn't believe in ghosts until last month, but I've believed in grief for 3 years now. The kind that thickens the air until breathing feels like punishment. The kind that stains everything quiet. Before that night on Route 12, I had a family. A real one, my wife Claire, our 2 girls, Emma and Lucy. Emma was 13, sarcastic and brilliant, already taller than Claire. Lucy was 8, all laughter and light, still missing a few front teeth, and proud of every gap. We were coming back from my sister's house that night. One of those summer evenings where the air smells like rain and dust, and the road hums under your tires like it's alive. I remember Lucy humming a song in the back seat. I remember Claire's hand resting on my knee. Then I remember headlights. Everything after that is sound and metal. They told me later it was a drunk driver, a man named Robert Eames. He crossed the center line at 70 miles an hour. His truck hit us head on. Emma and Lucy were gone before the paramedics arrived. Claire and I lived. That's the cruelest part. I woke up in the hospital with 2 broken ribs, a shattered arm, and a heartbeat I didn't want. Claire was in the next room. When I saw her for the first time, she was staring at the wall. Not crying, just staring, her lips moving around a single word I couldn't hear. I found out later she was saying their names. Over and over, we went home a month later. The house looked the same from the outside. White paint, red shutters, that porch swing I'd promised to fix and never did. But inside, it wasn't a house anymore. It was a grave we paid property tax on. Their rooms are still exactly as they left them. Emma's desk is covered in doodles and old math homework. Her band posters are curling at the corners from humidity. Lucy's crayons melted into a single lump of colour in the cup on her desk. I never threw it away. Sometimes, when the house is too quiet, I go in and open their drawers just to smell their clothes. The scent is fading. Everything is fading. So I close the drawer again before I start screaming. People say grief comes in waves. That's a lie. Waves suggest breaks between drowning. This isn't waves. This is groundwater. It seeps through every floorboard, every conversation, every breath. You don't drown in it. You just learn to breathe water. The neighbours stopped coming by after a while. At first they brought casseroles, cards, awkward hugs. Then they realised grief doesn't shrink politely. It takes the house with it. Claire and I stopped talking too. Words became useless. We communicate through motion. She leaves coffee for me on the table. I fix things around the house she'll never use. Every night I set 4 plates for dinner, then put 2 back. She doesn't stop me anymore. Birthdays are the worst. No cake, no candles, just quiet rituals of pretending we're alive. On Lucy's last birthday, I bought a cake anyway. Chocolate, her favourite. I sat at the table and ate 1 slice while Claire stayed in the garden, kneeling in dirt, touching dead flowers like they could hear her. I threw the rest of the cake in the trash before it turned into another ghost. It's strange, what you cling to. I still can't bring myself to throw away the school calendar pinned to the fridge. Every square filled with their scrawled notes. Band practice, soccer, a field trip we never took. Each X I cross out feels like erasing them again. The old me is buried at Riverside Cemetery, plot 447, next to 2 small headstones with lamb statues. Emma and Lucy Harris, 2008-2021, 2013-2021. That's where I go when I forget how to feel. I talk to the dirt. I bring flowers they'll never smell. I stay until the ground feels warmer than my own skin. People mean well, but they say the wrong things. They're in a better place. Time heals. You'll see them again someday. Time doesn't heal. It just gives you enough space to rot quietly. 6 months ago, I started turning on the TV every night, not to watch, just to fill the silence. A voice, even an artificial one, was better than none at all. I'd sit on the couch folding laundry, pretending the house wasn't a mausoleum. Then one night, I heard his name, Robert Eames. I looked up. There he was. Not the blood-covered monster from my nightmares, not the drunk animal who killed my daughters. This version was clean-shaven, polite, wearing a tie, sitting across from a smiling anchor in a studio. The headline below his face read, "Model inmate seeks redemption." He told his story. His voice was calm, low, rehearsed. He talked about his sister's suicide, about the bottle that followed, about the accident. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he said. "Not a day goes by that I don't think about those girls." His voice cracked perfectly, a practiced tremor, the kind that sounds real enough to fool anyone who hasn't buried children. He said he wished he could trade places with them. And for 1 second, one dangerous, treacherous second, I believed him. Because grief recognizes grief. Even across a gulf you never wanted bridged. But that second ended fast. While he was drinking himself into oblivion, my daughters were watching Finding Nemo for the 100th time. They were laughing, singing along. His sister left a note. Mine left empty bedrooms. He had a redemption story to sell. My girls were just the tragedy that made him sympathetic. The news anchor smiled. "And next month," she said, "Mr. Eames will have his first parole hearing." Something in me clicked. A sound, deep and mechanical, like a gear catching after years of rust. I turned off the TV, but his voice stayed in the room. I wish I could trade places with them. I said the words out loud, testing how they sounded. Then I whispered, "I wish you could too." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, staring at the wall where the girls' drawings still hung. The clock ticked so loud it felt like a heartbeat outside my body. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I called the TV station that morning, told them who I was. "I'm Daniel Harris," I said, "father of the 2 girls Robert Eames killed on Route 12. I want to meet him." There was a pause. Then the woman on the line said, "You want to meet him?" "Yes," before his hearing. She said she'd call me back. She did, less than an hour later. "The network would be honored to arrange it," she said. Of course they would. Good television. When I told Claire, she didn't speak at first. She just stared at me, eyes hollow. Then she said, "Why?" "Because I need to look him in the eye." "And what then?" I don't know." "Yes, you do," she said quietly. She was right. I did. The day I went to see him, it rained. Not a heavy rain. Just enough to make the air thick, like the sky was struggling to breathe. The cameras were already set up when I arrived. The crew handed me a mic. The prison gates loomed like teeth, grey and slick. The guards looked bored, detached. They led me into the yard. Across the wet concrete, a small group waited. 2 guards, a warden, a man in handcuffs and a beige jumpsuit. Robert Eames. He looked smaller in person, thinner. His hair was starting to grey. When he saw me, his face crumpled. He started crying before I even reached him. Not the polite tears from TV. Real crying. Shoulders shaking, snot choking on breath. "Mr. Harris," he said, voice shaking. Not a day goes by. He couldn't finish. For a heartbeat, I saw what he wanted me to see. A man broken by his own guilt. A mirror version of myself. A father without children. And for that heartbeat, I almost pitied him. But pity dies fast when memory plays on repeat. The metal. The scream. The silence after I stepped closer. The guards shifted slightly but didn't stop me. "When Lucy was 6, I said, "she told me she wanted to be a pilot. She said she'd cruise the skies." That's what she called it. His sobs deepened. "Emma wanted to be a nurse," I said. "She said she'd fix people who were hurt." The cameras zoomed in. I saw my reflection in one of the lenses. Hollow eyes, rain streaking my face, hands trembling. I reached out and took his wrist. The plan had been in my head for months, grief sharpened into purpose. I knew exactly how long it would take to twist, to pull, to make sure he felt it before the guards stopped me. But then, I heard her. Not memory, not imagination. A voice, high, clear, proud. "Daddy," she said. "Listen." And then she recited it. The poem. If I could write a story, I would write the greatest story ever told. It would be about my father, because he has a heart of gold. Lucy, my Lucy. Her voice, exactly as it sounded that night in the living room when she made me sit down and close my eyes for her performance. I could hear her small hands flipping the paper. Her giggle at messing up the last line. My grip loosened. The plan dissolved. I let go. From far away, it probably looked like forgiveness, like grace. Later, the news called it mercy. A father's strength. But that's not what stopped me. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the sound of my daughter reminding me who I used to be. That night, I came home soaked to the bone. Claire was asleep. The house was dark except for the crooked frame on the wall. Lucy's poem, pink crayon on construction paper. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. The G in gold was pressed so hard it tore through the paper. I read it out loud, voice trembling. If I could write a story, I would write the greatest story ever told. And then, from behind me, faint but real, a child's voice finished it. "'Cause he has a heart of gold." My knees gave out. The air went electric, humming with something I didn't understand. The crayon lines seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Fresh, wet, alive. Then it was gone. Just paper, just silence. But I know what I heard, and I know what I felt. Something in that house had shifted. The accident hadn't ended. It had just changed form. The morning after I met him, the house was too quiet again. It felt like waking up from a dream that hadn't finished. My clothes from the prison were still damp, hanging on the chair near the window. The rain had stopped during the night, but the world outside still looked washed out. Grey trees, slick pavement, the kind of light that flattens everything. Claire made coffee but didn't look at me. We sat across from each other in silence. The steam between us felt heavier than words. Finally, she asked, "Did you do what you went there to do?" I shook my head. No. Her spoon clinked against the mug. Good. I wanted to tell her about Lucy's voice, about the way the air had changed, about the sound of her words echoing in my skull, still warm, still alive. But I didn't. Claire had built her survival on not believing in anything anymore. If I took that away, she'd crumble. So I drank my coffee and let the silence grow again. When she left for work, I stayed at the table, tracing the rim of my cup with one finger. The poem hung crooked on the wall, the way it always did. Every time I tried to straighten it, it would tilt again within a day. I used to think it was the house settling. Now I wasn't sure the house had ever stopped moving. I stood up and fixed it anyway. If I could write a story, I whispered. Nothing. The air just sat there, stale and still. That afternoon, I drove to Riverside Cemetery. The gravel crunched under my tires, the same sound it always made, but this time it felt louder. I parked by plot 447 and walked through wet grass that clung to my shoes. The lamb statues on their headstones were spotted with moss now. Lucy's had a little crack down its side, like it had been crying too long. I knelt down, brushing dirt off the carved letters. "I heard you yesterday," I said. My voice came out hoarse. I heard you, sweetheart. The wind didn't move. Not even the trees stirred. I didn't hurt him, I said. You stopped me. You saved me. Silence. Then a sound. Faint, but there. A whisper, maybe. I turned around, heart pounding. But the cemetery was empty. Still, I could have sworn I'd heard something that sounded like breathing. When I got home, the house smelled different. Like rain and wax crayons. I went upstairs, slow, careful, as though stepping into someone else's dream. Lucy's door was cracked open. I hadn't left it that way. The air inside her room felt warmer, softer. The nightlight, dead for years, was glowing faint blue. My throat tightened. Lucy! The curtains fluttered, even though the window was closed. I heard you yesterday, I whispered again. Can you hear me now? Nothing. But then I saw it, her notebook, the one with glitter stars on the cover, lying open on the floor. I knelt and turned it toward me. The pages were blank except for one line, scrawled in pink crayon. You did good, Daddy. My hands started shaking so hard I dropped it. When I looked again, the page was blank. For days after that, I barely slept. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and sit in her room, waiting. The air would shift sometimes. A creak in the floor, a breath against the wall. Nothing clear, but it was enough. Claire stopped talking to me altogether. I could feel her slipping away with every quiet dinner, every glance she refused to meet. One night she finally broke. You're talking to them again, she said. I didn't deny it. They're gone, Daniel. No, they're not, I said. They're here. You just don't listen. Her voice trembled. You can't keep doing this. Doing what? Pretending they're still alive. The sound of her shouting hit me harder than the words. It had been years since either of us had raised our voice. I'm not pretending, I said quietly. I heard Lucy. I saw her handwriting. Claire stepped closer, tears pooling in her eyes. Please, don't make me lose you too. She went to bed after that. I stayed in the living room, staring at the crooked frame until dawn. 2 weeks later, the news ran a segment about Eames again. Public divided on parole denial, the anchor said. They showed him smiling in court, thanking the board for their consideration. I felt something inside me twist. The next morning, I started writing him letters. I told him about Emma's laugh, about Lucy's bedtime stories. I told him what he took from us, what it meant to live in the wreckage of someone else's night of fun. The first few letters were rage, pure, unfiltered hatred. Then they became something else. Confession, maybe. I didn't mail them. I just kept them in a drawer. But writing them made me feel like I was talking to both him and them. I went back to work eventually. Construction jobs mostly. I kept my head down. But grief has a way of finding cracks to seep into. Every sound became memory. The whine of a power saw turned into screeching tires. The smell of asphalt became burnt rubber. Once, while carrying lumber, I heard a child laugh behind me. I turned, expecting to see one of the crew joking around. There was no one, just the echo. Nights were worse. I started hearing tapping, faint, rhythmic. At first I thought it was the pipes, but it came from the wall behind the couch. 3 taps, then silence. 3 taps again, like someone knocking from inside. I pressed my ear against the wall once. The wood was warm. Claire moved into the guest room after that. One morning, she found me asleep on the living room floor with the TV on static. You're scaring me, she said. I think she's trying to tell me something. Who? Lucy, her eyes closed. You need help. I didn't argue. What could I say? That my dead child was leaving notes and crayons that vanished. That the air in her room felt like breathing skin. That sometimes I woke up to the faint smell of shampoo and rain. There's no therapy for this kind of haunting. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke to music, a faint tune playing down the hall. I followed it to Lucy's room. Her little pink radio was on, the one that hadn't worked since the crash. It was playing a lullaby, the same one she used to hum in the backseat that night. I turned it off. My hand was trembling so bad I almost dropped it. The moment the sound stopped, I felt the air shift, like someone sighing. Then a whisper. Daddy. It was behind me. I turned. No one. But I swear the nightlight flickered brighter, just once, like a heartbeat. I sat on the bed. Lucy, I whispered. If that's you, what do you want? No answer. Just that faint smell again. Grape shampoo and crayons. When I finally went back to bed, Claire was gone. She'd taken her pillow, her toothbrush. I found a note on the counter. I can't do this anymore. I love you, but I can't live with ghosts. The house was mine again. Or maybe I was its prisoner. The days blurred after that. I started hearing 2 voices now. One high and soft, one older. Emma and Lucy maybe, or the echo of who I wanted them to be. I'd catch glimpses of movement in mirrors, shapes, flashes of colour. Once, I saw a reflection of 2 girls standing behind me, holding hands. When I turned, the room was empty. That night, I unplugged every mirror in the house, covered them with sheets. I began recording myself sleeping. Hours of footage, showing nothing but a still room. Until one morning I pressed play and froze. In the corner of the frame, the poem's picture moved, tilted slightly, then righted itself. A week later I dreamed of the crash again, but this time I wasn't behind the wheel. I was standing on the side of the road watching it happen, helpless. I saw the headlights, the impact, the silence after, and then 2 small figures walking away from the wreck. I tried to run after them, but my legs wouldn't move. When I woke, I was sitting upright in bed, my throat raw from screaming. The morning light poured through the curtains. The air felt lighter, like the dream had taken something with it. I went downstairs. The crooked frame was lying flat on the table, a single pink crayon rolled beside it. I hadn't seen a crayon in 3 years. That night, I opened a new notebook and wrote at the top, if I could write a story, I didn't know what would come next. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. The pen moved anyway. Words I didn't choose filled the page. I would write the greatest story ever told. It would be about my father because he has a heart of gold. The same handwriting. Lucy's loops, her uneven lines. I dropped the pen. My pulse was a drum in my ears. The letters on the page shimmered for a moment before settling. Are you here? I whispered. The lamp flickered once. That's when I knew she was. Or I'd finally gone insane. The next morning, the TV turned itself on again. Not static this time, a local news broadcast. The anchor's voice filled the room. Tragedy today at the state penitentiary, she said. Inmate Robert Eames, 46, died of a heart attack last night. I froze. They found him holding a drawing, the anchor continued. A child's drawing. The words, heart of gold, written in crayon. The mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. Coffee spread across the tiles like blood. The poem on the wall tilted again. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. I turned every light on in the house waiting for something. Anger, relief, horror. But none of it came. Only quiet. And in that quiet, for the first time, I felt them both near. Not haunting me. Not scaring me. Just there. Breathing with me. I whispered into the still air. I'm sorry. A faint voice, soft and small, answered from somewhere beyond the dark. We know. It took me 3 days to go back there. 3 days of silence, rain, and the smell of old coffee before I finally drove back to the prison. I told myself it was to find closure, to understand, but that was a lie. The truth was simpler. I wanted to see the place where he died. The guard at the front desk recognized me immediately. You're Mr. Harris, right? The father. I nodded. He didn't ask questions. He just led me down a corridor that smelled like bleach and rain-soaked concrete. The world here had no color, only shades of grey. We stopped outside an office with a metal door and a plaque that read, Chaplain Donovan. The chaplain himself was small, balding, with kind eyes that didn't reach their mark anymore. Mr. Harris, he said softly. I'm so sorry for what you've gone through. Please, sit. He closed the door behind us and sat across from me, folding his hands. I understand you came to ask about Mr. Eames. I just want to know what happened. The chaplain nodded. He died in his sleep. No suffering, at least not physical. Heart failure. And the drawing? He hesitated. It was found in his cell. We think he made it himself. I shook my head. No, he didn't. The chaplain frowned. Excuse me? Lucy drew that. My daughter. He had no right to it. He blinked, unsure if I was accusing him or God. Sometimes the dying see what they need to see, he said. We all crave forgiveness. He didn't get mine. I didn't say he did. I stood up. The room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls were leaning in to listen. Can I see the drawing? I asked. He hesitated. It's part of the record now, but he studied me for a long moment, then opened a drawer and pulled out a clear evidence sleeve. Inside was the paper. I knew it the second I saw it. Pink crayon, uneven letters. The word gold pressed too hard. It wasn't a copy. It was the same one. I reached for it, but he pulled it back slightly. I can't let you take it. I just need to hold it. He sighed and handed me the sleeve. The plastic was cold. The paper inside felt like it was humming. Low, faint, but real. I stared at it for a long time, my throat closing. The chaplain's voice blurred into background noise. When I finally handed it back, he asked quietly, Do you believe in miracles, Mr. Harris? I used to, I said. He nodded, like he'd expected that answer. When I stepped outside, the sky was bruised grey and purple. The air smelled of wet metal. I didn't notice I was crying until I reached the car. I drove home on autopilot, headlights cutting through drizzle. The wipers squeaked rhythmically, a metronome for thoughts I didn't want. By the time I pulled into the driveway, night had fallen. The house glowed faintly from within, even though I'd turned all the lights off before leaving. I stepped inside slowly. The air was warm, thick with that familiar scent, crayons, shampoo, and rain. The poem's frame hung perfectly straight. That alone stopped me cold. It had never been straight, not once. Lucy, I whispered. Silence. Then, footsteps upstairs. Small ones. I climbed the stairs, every creak sounding too loud. The hall light flickered once, then stayed steady. Lucy's door was ajar. When I pushed it open, something moved across the bed. The shadow of a child turning over in sleep. Emma? No answer. Just the faint sound of breathing. I took a step closer. The bed was empty, but the pillow was indented, as if someone had just lifted their head. The air shimmered again, faintly glowing for half a heartbeat. Then it was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on the stairs. 2 sets, small, bare. They stopped halfway down and vanished. I didn't tell anyone. There was no one left to tell. I spent the day cleaning the house. It felt like the only thing I could control. I washed the windows, vacuumed the rugs, even repainted the hallway. But when I came back upstairs that night, there was a new mark on the wall. A handprint. Tiny, faint, pressed into wet paint. I touched it. The outline felt warm. A week later, the TV turned on by itself again. I was in the kitchen when I heard the static hum. I walked into the living room and froze. It wasn't news this time. It was footage from the prison. The same interview, Eames sitting across from the anchor, talking about redemption. But the audio was wrong. The sound had changed. When the anchor asked, "What would you say to the families?" Eames didn't answer with his practiced sorrow. Instead, a child's voice came through the speakers. "Daddy." Then another. "Listen." The TV screen flickered. The image twisted, like the pixels were melting. For a split second, I saw two small faces on the screen, blurred by static. Emma. Lucy. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The light shattered. Then the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. I could still see faint movement. Not light exactly, but shapes that pressed against the dark. I heard laughter. Soft, familiar. Lucy. Emma. Something brushed past me. A rush of air, like someone running by. The front door creaked open on its own. A gust of cold wind swept in, carrying the smell of asphalt and rain. I stepped outside. The street was empty. At the end of the driveway, a figure stood under the streetlight. Small, still. Watching. "Lucy," I whispered again. The figure didn't move. The light flickered once, twice, then went out. When it came back on, she was gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, the house breathing around me like an animal. I was past fear now. There was only waiting. When morning came, I drove to Route 12, the stretch of road where it happened. The state had repaired it years ago. Smooth asphalt, new guardrails, no sign of blood or fire. But the ghost of that night was still there. I parked on the shoulder and sat for a long time, watching cars flash by. After a while, I got out and walked to the spot where the impact happened. I didn't need a marker. My body remembered. The sound of engines faded into a hum. I closed my eyes. Emma. Lucy. The wind picked up, warm and soft, brushing against my face. And then, voices. Faint, overlapping. "Daddy. We're here." When I opened my eyes, the world was blurred. The road shimmered in the heat like water. For a heartbeat, I saw them. Two girls standing in the middle of the road holding hands, smiling. Then they were gone. I drove home shaking. The house greeted me with silence. I sat on the couch and stared at the poem again. If I could write a story, I traced the words with my finger, and then I saw it. At the bottom of the paper, something new had appeared. Faint, small, written in pink crayon. "Finish it." I started writing that night. It wasn't a decision. It just happened. I took out one of my notebooks and began where Lucy's poem left off. I would write the greatest story ever told. The words came like breathing, about my father, because he has a heart of gold. He never stopped loving us. We never stopped loving him. We just got lost on the way home. When I looked down at the page, my handwriting was trembling, but the last line wasn't mine. "We're waiting, Daddy." The letters glowed faintly, like heat. I heard the doorbell then. Sharp, unexpected. I hadn't had visitors in months. When I opened the door, no one was there. Just a small box sitting on the porch. No label. I brought it inside, hands shaking. Inside was a cassette tape. No note. No explanation. I still had an old tape player in the basement. I dusted it off, put the tape in, and pressed play. For a few seconds, only static. Then, a faint voice. "Daddy, drive safe." My heart stopped. Then another voice, older. "Love you, Daddy." Emma, Lucy, their voices. Recorded that last morning before the trip. I'd forgotten I'd recorded them singing in the car. I sat there listening to it on loop until the tape warped from overuse. That night, I dreamed of the prison. Eames was there, standing in the yard, looking up at the sky. He was smiling. When he turned toward me, his face wasn't his anymore. "It was mine." He raised a hand. "You heard them too, didn't you?" I woke up screaming. The next morning, I couldn't find the poem. The frame was empty. I searched every room, every drawer. Gone. But when I went outside to get the mail, there it was, hanging from the maple tree in the front yard, swaying gently in the breeze, pinned by a pink ribbon. The edges of the paper were damp, but the words were still clear, and beneath them, one more line. "Come home, Daddy." The letters were fresh. The crayon still smelled warm. That was the moment I understood. The voices weren't haunting me. They were calling me back. Back to where it ended. Back to Route 12. The night after I found the poem hanging in the maple tree, I couldn't stay still. I walked the house from room to room, switching the lights on and off like I was checking for pulse. Every bulb hummed with that faint flicker. A heartbeat made of electricity. I told myself I was being rational, that I just needed sleep. But the air had changed again. It felt charged. Like the moments before a storm, even the walls seemed to listen. Around 2 a.m., I went outside. The poem was still there, twisting in the wind, the ribbon glowing faintly under the porch light. I took it down, careful not to tear it, and brought it inside. I set it on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. The words looked the same as ever, childish, uneven, but now they pulsed faintly, as if breathing. "Come home, Daddy." I whispered the words out loud, tasting each one. The air in the room shifted, and for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I felt invited. I went upstairs to their rooms, leaving the lights on behind me. Emma's room was untouched. Posters, sketchbooks, the faint smell of pencil lead. Lucy's was different. The nightlight was glowing again. The bed was neatly made, and on the desk, beside her melted crayons, sat something new. A small paper airplane folded perfectly with one word written across the wing in pink crayon. Fly. My throat tightened. Lucy used to fold paper planes by the dozen. She'd throw them down the hallway until they tore apart. I picked it up, unfolded it gently. Inside, written in smaller letters, "Come home." The exact same words from the poem. I barely remember sleeping that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlights. The crash replayed in fragments. The sound of metal, Lucy's scream, Claire's hand reaching out. Only now, the dream ended differently. In this version, I saw two girls standing on the road, smiling, waving. "Come home, Daddy," they said. And when I tried to run to them, the ground stretched like taffy, pulling me farther away. When I woke up, I was on the floor beside the bed, drenched in sweat, my fingers clenched around the paper airplane. The next day, I drove to the cemetery again. The sky was grey, the air heavy with that strange metallic scent that comes before rain. Their graves looked the same. Lamb statues, polished marble, flowers withered at the stems. But when I knelt, I noticed something odd. The soil over Lucy's plot looked disturbed. Fresh. My heart hammered. I touched it. The dirt was damp, softer than it should have been. There were marks, not animal tracks, but small bare footprints. I stumbled back, looked around. No one. The entire cemetery was still, like the world had paused to watch. "I know you're here," I whispered. The wind picked up. Trees rustled. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard laughter. Faint, but close. Then silence again. When I got home, the air inside the house felt different again. Humid, electric, alive. The radio in the kitchen was on, but it wasn't tuned to a station. Just static. Through it, I could hear whispers. Two voices. "Daddy. Almost home." I turned the dial, trying to catch the signal. The static shifted, rose and fell like waves. The voices came through again, clearer this time. "Come home, Daddy." I dropped the radio. It hit the floor and went silent. Then the power flickered, and every light in the house dimmed at once. I grabbed my phone and hit record. "If you're here," I said aloud, "say something. Anything." For a moment, there was only my breathing, then a faint sound. 3 knocks. Once, twice, 3 times. From the wall behind me, I turned slowly. The wall was blank, white paint and shadows. I stepped closer. My reflection wavered in the glass of a framed photo. Me, Claire, and the girls at the beach years ago. As I stared, the image rippled. The girls' faces blurred. The sky behind them darkened until it was night. "Daddy." The voice came from the picture. I dropped it. The glass cracked. For the next few days, I barely left the house. The world outside didn't feel real anymore. Just noise and movement. Inside, at least, there was purpose. The haunting had rhythm now. Every night, around 2 a.m., I'd hear tapping on the walls, like a child knocking to be let in. The lights would flicker, the air would shift, and always that whisper, "Come home." At first I tried ignoring it. I turned on music, left the TV blaring all night. But the voices just adapted. They whispered through the static, sang through the hum of the refrigerator, laughed behind the hiss of running water. One night, I woke up to find my phone recording on its own. The screen glowed faintly on the nightstand. I pressed play. Silence at first, then a giggle. "Lucy's. Daddy's sleeping," she whispered, as if talking to Emma. Then another voice. Older. Softer. Not for long. The recording ended. I started noticing changes around the house. Doors that wouldn't stay shut. Windows fogged from the inside. The smell of rain even when it was dry. One morning, I found a small handprint on the inside of the bathroom mirror. The glass was cold, but the mark felt warm. I tried cleaning it off. It didn't fade. Later that day, the mirror cracked on its own. Claire called once. Her voice was distant, tired. "You need to get out of that house, Daniel." "I can't." "Why?" "Because they're here." A long pause. "They're not here." "They're gone." "No," I said. "They're waiting for me." She didn't answer. Then quietly, "If you stay there, you'll die." Maybe that's the point. The line went dead. That evening, the radio turned on again by itself. Only this time, there was music. A lullaby. The same one Lucy used to hum in the car that night. The air shimmered. I turned toward the living room and froze. The girls' silhouettes stood in the doorway, 2 faint outlines made of light and dust. Emma taller, Lucy smaller, holding her sister's hand. "Daddy," Lucy said. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "You came back," Emma said softly. "I never left," I whispered. They smiled. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they were gone, leaving only the smell of rain and crayons. That night, I dreamed of Route 12 again, but this time I wasn't driving. I was standing in the middle of the road. No headlights, no crash, just silence. Then I heard their laughter behind me. When I turned, the road was lined with paper airplanes, hundreds of them, glowing faintly. The girls stood at the far end, waving me closer. "Come home, Daddy," they said together. I took one step forward and woke up to the sound of my front door unlocking itself. I sat up in bed. The house was dark, but the air felt alive, vibrating with quiet sound. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Bare feet. Lucy? The footsteps stopped outside my door. Then, slowly, it creaked open. 2 small figures stood in the doorway, their faces lost in shadow. "Come home," one whispered. "Where?" I managed to say. They smiled. "You'll see." And then they vanished. I don't remember falling asleep again, but I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. The air smelled like rain, though the forecast had been clear. On the kitchen table lay a new note, written in pink crayon. "Tonight, Route 12. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The letters looked freshly drawn, the wax still soft. All day, I tried convincing myself not to go. I told myself it was madness, grief, sleep deprivation. But deep down, I already knew I'd go. I'd been going there ever since the first whisper. As night fell, I packed the poem, the paper airplane, and the note into my jacket pocket. The sky was bruised purple again, just like that night 3 years ago. When I reached the car, I hesitated. The keys felt heavy in my hand. I started the engine anyway. The drive was quiet. Route 12 stretched out ahead, empty, endless. The headlights cut through fog that shouldn't have been there. About a mile from the crash site, the radio turned on by itself. Static, then laughter, then a voice. "Almost home, Daddy." My chest tightened. Tears blurred the road. When I reached the spot, I pulled over and turned off the engine. The night was alive with sound. Wind, cicadas, and something else. Voices. Faint. Singing. I stepped out. The air smelled like rain and burnt rubber. I walked to the center of the road, exactly where it happened. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Then from the darkness ahead, 2 figures emerged. Small, glowing faintly. "Emma and Lucy. Come home," they said. I felt the ground shift under my feet. A warmth rising through the asphalt, through my bones. "Is it really you?" I whispered. "Yes," Lucy said. "We've been waiting." Emma reached out her hand. "It's not scary. Not anymore." The headlights of a passing car flashed in the distance, blinding me for an instant. When I blinked, the girls were gone. Only their laughter remained, fading into the wind. When I got back home, the house was completely dark. The power had gone out again. I set the poem on the table and lit a candle. The flame flickered wildly, casting shadows that moved like people. "Tonight," I whispered. Route 12. The candle guttered, then steadied. Outside, thunder rolled. Something was calling me back, and this time, I knew I'd answer. The night I decided to go back, the world felt still. The kind of stillness that happens before something breaks. The sky was heavy, colorless. Even the cicadas had gone quiet. I left every light in the house on, not because I was afraid of the dark, but because I didn't want the house to forget me. It had become more than walls and dust. It had become the body of my grief. Every corner held a breath of the past. Every floorboard remembered their footsteps. On the kitchen table sat the poem, the paper airplane, and the crayon note. The candle beside them had burned down to a stub. I stared at the melted wax, thinking how much it looked like the crayons Lucy left on her desk. Melted, colorful, shapeless. I slipped the poem into my jacket pocket. Then I whispered, "All right, girls, I'm coming." The clock on the wall read 11:58 p.m. The drive to Route 12 felt longer this time. The fog was thicker, the road narrower. I could feel the hum of the tires through the steering wheel, like a heartbeat under my palms. The headlights stretched ahead but didn't reach far. The world beyond them looked unreal, just a void pretending to be night. Halfway there, the radio turned on by itself again. No static this time, just breathing. Then softly, "Daddy?" I swallowed hard. "I'm here. Almost home," the voice whispered. The dashboard lights flickered. The engine sputtered once, then steadied. I pressed my foot to the gas. When I reached the curve where it happened, I slowed down. The fog thickened, wrapping around the car like cotton. My hands trembled on the wheel. Then I saw it. 2 faint silhouettes standing on the side of the road. Emma and Lucy. They weren't glowing this time. They looked real. Emma in her favorite hoodie, Lucy in her pajamas with the little stars. Their hair moved in the wind. Their eyes were clear. "Stop," Lucy said softly. I pulled over. My heart was a hammer in my chest. The engine ticked. "Come home, Daddy," she said again. "I am home," I whispered. Emma shook her head. "Not yet." They both turned and started walking down the road, away from the curve, their bare feet silent on the asphalt. I opened the door and stepped out. The air was cold, damp with mist. I followed them. The road stretched endlessly forward, swallowed by fog. My footsteps echoed faintly, as though the world had turned into a hallway. The girls stayed a few meters ahead, never looking back, their figures flickering between shadow and light. "Where are we going?" I called. "Home," Lucy said again, her voice small, certain. My breath came in short bursts. The fog thickened until I couldn't see the car anymore. It was just us and the sound of distant thunder. Then, somewhere behind the clouds, lightning flashed. For an instant, I saw the wreck, the twisted metal, the shards of glass, my own face reflected in the windshield. I stumbled, my knees giving out. When I looked up again, the road was gone. I was standing in a field. The air smelled like summer, grass, rain, lilac. Fireflies drifted in the distance, and in the middle of that field stood a small house. White walls, blue shutters. A porch swing, our house, the same one from before the accident. Lucy ran ahead, laughing. Emma followed, glancing back at me with that same patient smile she always had when her little sister ran too fast. "Come on, Daddy," she called. I walked toward them, slow at first, then faster. The grass brushed my legs, my lungs burned. When I reached the porch, they were waiting. "Is Mum here?" I asked. Emma shook her head. "Not yet." Lucy reached for my hand. "You can stay until she's ready." Her fingers were warm, real. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. The air was soft, humming with something like forgiveness. Inside the house, everything was as it used to be. The smell of Claire's cinnamon candles, the hum of the old fridge, the sound of Emma's music leaking from her room upstairs. I stood in the living room and turned slowly, taking it all in. The crooked frame was there too, Lucy's poem, hanging perfectly straight now. I reached for it, but when my hand touched the paper, the words rippled like water. "If I could write a story," I whispered. Lucy finished it from across the room. "I would write the greatest story ever told." Emma added, "because he has a heart of gold." I laughed and cried all at once. The sound came out broken, but it was joy. The girls laughed too. Their voices filled every corner. Then Lucy's smile faded. She tilted her head. "You can't stay long, Daddy." My chest tightened. "Why not?" "Because you're still alive." The words hit me like a wave. I looked around again. The walls shimmered. The air flickered. This wasn't a house. It was a memory, holding itself together just long enough to let me in. Emma took my hand. "We wanted you to see that we're okay." Lucy nodded. "And so are you." I shook my head. "I'm not." "You will be," Emma said softly. "But you have to let go." Outside, thunder rolled closer. The world around us trembled, edges fraying. "What happens if I stay?" I asked. Lucy looked down. "Then you'll never find us again." Her words were soft, but they broke something in me. I knelt and pulled them both into my arms. They felt small, solid, real. Their hearts beat against mine. "I don't want to lose you again," I said. "You won't," Emma whispered. "You'll see us in everything. The rain, the music, the light through the window," Lucy added. "And in stories." I held them tighter. The world began to fade, colours draining into white. "Time to go, Daddy," Lucy said. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I was lying on the asphalt. The sky above me was grey, the dawn bleeding through. My car was parked a few metres away, door open. The fog had lifted. The poem was still in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out. The paper was dry, uncreased, but the last line had changed. "We found our way home. You can too." I pressed the paper to my chest and let the morning sun wash over me. I don't remember driving home. One moment I was standing on Route 12. The next I was walking through my front door. The house was quiet. Still, but not empty. I sat at the kitchen table, unfolded the paper airplane, and placed it beside the poem. The words inside glowed faintly for a moment before fading. I whispered, "Thank you." The lights flickered once, gentle, like a nod. Days passed, then weeks. Claire called again. She didn't say much, just that she was thinking about coming back. "You sound different," she said. "I feel different." I didn't tell her about what happened. Some things aren't meant for words. I just told her, "I think they're okay now." At night, the house feels peaceful. The air is warm, still carrying traces of rain and lilac. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear laughter down the hall. It doesn't scare me anymore. I've started writing again. Not letters this time. Stories. About two sisters who got lost and found their way home. About a man learning how to breathe again. The first story begins with the same words that started all of this. If I could write a story, I would write the greatest story ever told. I write it every night before bed, not to summon them, but to remember. Because grief doesn't end. It just changes shape, from pain into memory, from memory into love, and love doesn't die. It just learns new ways to speak. Last night, while closing the curtains, I heard something outside. The wind chime by the porch was moving, though there was no wind. I stepped closer and smiled. Two paper airplanes rested on the windowsill, edges glowing faintly in the moonlight. On one was written, "Good night, Daddy." On the other, "Love you always." I left them there. Didn't need to touch them. I already knew they were home. Epilogue. Sometimes I drive down Route 12 at sunset. The road is quiet then, painted gold by the dying light. I stop at the curve and sit there, watching the world shift between night and day. Every so often, I see two shapes in the distance, small, bright, moving through the mist. They never get closer, but they don't disappear either, and that's enough. Because I know in some way I'll never understand. We found each other again. Not in this world maybe, but somewhere just beyond it, where headlights don't blind, where no one drives drunk, where little girls laugh forever.